This is Tales of Metal Angels, Chapter 1, a work-in-progress novel by me, Casey Rivers, also known as Cross to Bowman, or I want to be a hero.t35.com. Magic. Just what is this realm, this blessing of our world, this power that floats above us all like a dream? I often wonder this when the moon is thick and my eyes are heavy with sleep. But then, I suppose many of us do. Iroveld shifted and the camera followed him to show a diagram of our solar system. Many people claim our stars to be the source. I agree this is not an unreasonable guess. To think these stars that shine in the dim night are accountable for the pools of magic we draw to this world is not hard to believe. However, fact or fiction, these stars will fill our eyes with dreams and wonder at a glance. Viewers at home, look to them whenever you have trouble with your own magic, and perhaps you will find an answer. Scott slouched back in his chair. Yeah, but what if you're having trouble at breakfast time? The television image of Iroveld kept on talking about magic in space. Tori gave Scott a cynical look. Try asking louder, I don't think he heard you. Scott smirked. Yeah, but what if we're having trouble at breakfast time? He shouted. Tori rolled his eyes. The two of them were pretty much quiet the rest of the episode, not wanting to miss a word. Being complete fanatics of the amazing Mage Iroveld's TV show, Knowledge and Mysteries of Our World, they didn't find it difficult. At the end of the hour, Iroveld closed with his usual "let knowledge guide you" speech, and the TV was flipped off to avoid Tagag's talk show, which was like an awkward combination of drinking hot sauce and watching grass grow. After the unpleasant first impression, they never dared watch it again, except once when the guest featured was Iroveld, in which case it was rather like an episode of KMOW, where the guest featured was Tagag. Scott and Tori got up, stretched, and started to chat about the episode when they were cut off by the doorbell ringing. Scott stepped up to the door and peeled it open, revealing their angry female friend, the one and only Eva. Scott and Tori, you couple of jerk faces, you were supposed to meet me at... Her sentence snapped off as she looked at them, standing in the door in nothing but their boxers. Oh, for God's sakes, you two! Scott scratched his head. What? It's not like we're going out in public like this. Who friggin' cares? Tori grabbed his pants off the table he'd neatly placed them on. Oh, please forgive us, Ava. Had we known you were coming over, we would have, dressed more appropriately. Scott lifted an eyebrow. How could we dress more appropriately when we didn't even dress in the first place? You guys are pathetic. Ava pouted and crossed her arms. I swear, you couldn't be worse if you tried. Scott grabbed the rim of his shorts and pulled down a little. Oh, for God's sake, Scott! Ava stomped into the house, slamming the door behind her, and angrily proceeded to scold them until they were both dressed and behaving well. Well, perhaps not well. They were never well behaved. She led the two into Scott's kitchen and plopped down on a stool. You were supposed to meet me at the lake for our class project, she proclaimed. It's due tomorrow. We're gonna get an F. So? Scott sat on a stool across from her and put his feet up on the table. Who cares about grades anyway? I mean, knowledge is great, but do they ever teach us anything we want to learn? Tori sat with them. I suppose you do have somewhat of a point, Scott, but regardless, we have to keep our grades up for the sake of our futures. Yeah, but what's the point of living if you never really live? Eva sighed. Come on, guys, all you ever care about is that stupid Iroveld show. You're not even a mage, Scott. He glared at her. As sad as it was for him to admit, he wasn't. Of the three of them, Scott was the only one who had no magic. It wasn't hard to believe, though. Few people in their village ever developed magic at all. Something in the water, maybe. Ava had low-level physical magic, which she used to enforce herself in hand-to-hand combat. But even at a low level, she could take on bears and even wolves unarmed. Tori excelled at magic. He was the most powerful child mage in the village, top of all the advanced classes at their school, but unpopular for some reason nobody really knew. And Scott was the strange one in the group. He had no magic and was about as physically strong as a bowl of whipped cream. He also had a back problem that often sent him to the infirmary during gym. But he was somewhat the leader of the group, although Tori and Ava would never admit it. Sharp-witted and daring with a strong sense of innovative thinking, he was often the one who would solve their problems, although most of the time it was his smart aleck side that caused the problems in the first place. Eva realized she might have insulted him a bit and left the subject. Well, come on, we need to finish this today. The three of them trekked off to the lake with their notebooks and worked until late, and were scolded by Eva for not finishing. Gerard wound his way through a cluster of trees and stopped at the point that was marked with red on his map. The sun had just set over the tiny village ahead, and the forest stood around him so still he could have heard a needle drop without magically enhancing his hearing. He stared back and forth from the map to the spot where he stood, and back to the map, and then back again, after a while finally determining that this was the exact spot, the spot where it would land. Definitely. And then he stared up at the dark sky. For a long time it was completely peaceful, the stars still across the atmosphere like a painting, unchanging, and by Gerard's mind, uninteresting and unbearable. He began to doubt his mission, although he could not afford to fail. If he didn't capture it, his master would surely have his head. But suddenly the entire magic climate seemed to shift, and out of the east appeared a tiny red spark just under the stars. The spark quickly grew into a small, glowing meteor, slicing through the shimmering stars across the sky. Gerard stared up in excitement and cast a small spell to sharpen his eyesight, and then grabbed a large magic-threaded bag, made to hold ancient, powerful relics, from his backpack. He braced himself and held open the mouth of the bag, set to catch the meteor as it hurtled toward him. But suddenly, as if to taunt the young mage into a raging fit, the meteor jerked its course to the north, skimming the air over the outskirts of the village. Gerard dropped the bag in shock. He had certainly heard of the stone playing tricks, but he never expected it to randomly change course like that. He cursed under his breath. He'd have to catch it the hard way then. Scott spat out his toothpaste and put the brush back on the counter, trudging off to bed. He jumped in and pulled the blankets up, but sleep didn't come, and he eventually was forced up and over to the window, restless with thought. He stared up at the stars. Magic, he thought. I know Iroveld said look to the stars when you have trouble with your own magic, but, he sighed, what do you do to get your own magic? Suddenly, Scott's gaze caught on a strange small star hanging in the distance. It had an eerie, blood-red glow about it, certainly something one didn't see often in the usual black and white sky. He watched as it flickered like a little torch up in space. After a while, he cocked an eyebrow at it. I wish for to be magic? Wait, does that only work on shooting stars? The red star seemed to glow brighter. All right then, he thought for a moment. I wish I had magic, he said promptly. Again the star grew brighter and bigger. Scott stared at it in confusion. Do stars do that normally? Bigger. 'Cause I'm pretty sure I've never seen anything like you, Mr. Red Star. Brighter. Of course, look at me. I'm talking to a star like it's a person. The red glow started to fill the center of the sky. Wisps of light curled over the ground outside Scott's window, and trees in the distance, just behind the center beat of the glow, seemed to drag with wind, pointing directly toward his window. And suddenly a strange thought dawned on him. Wait a minute. Are you a And then Scott was knocked out. The room seemed to swim around before his eyes as he slowly came to, crumpled into an awkward position on his bedroom floor. He could hear the phone ringing downstairs, which also rather sounded like it was underwater. Scott slowly pushed himself upright and rubbed his eyes until they refocused. He didn't remember going to sleep, but then he didn't remember much at all, staring out at a weird-looking star, and then... As the cloud of numbness engulfing him started to fade, a sort of burning pain lit up in his side. He reached down and felt an enormous bruise just between his ribcage and his waist. It felt like someone had kicked him in the stomach, or more like someone hit him with a metal bat. Ouch. He slowly stood up, pain slithering through him as he bent, and stumbled over to the bathroom down the hall. He stood in front of the mirror and lifted his shirt. The skin on the entire right side was a sick, blackish color, radiating from a swollen lump. Well, no wonder it hurt, but how'd it get there? Scott pulled his shirt back down and was making his way downstairs when the phone started ringing again. He got to the bottom and answered it. Hello? The person on the other end sighed in relief. Oh, thank goodness, Scott. I would have come over and woken you up if you'd slept any longer. I wasn't really sleeping, Tori. His voice shook as he touched the bruise again. Well, I was, but... Tori was quiet for a sec. Are you all right, Scott? You sound rather like you're hurt or something. Yeah, kinda. Do you need help, or should I come over? No, I'm fine, well, I don't really know what happened. One minute I was staring out at the stars, and the next I'm waking up with a huge bruise on my side. And I mean huge. This thing's gigantic. I've never been injured like this, but ow! Ow! Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I guess you're staying home from school then? School? The thought snapped in Scott's mind as he turned over to the clock. First period would start in just a few minutes. Ah, man, God, I don't know. There's no way I'll make it to first period with this injury. I can barely walk. Tori seemed concerned. Oh, well, it's okay. Ava and I finished the project in tutorial, although she was intensely mad that you overslept. And we can present it ourselves, I guess. The teacher will understand that you're injured. Ah, man, Tori, I couldn't. He stared up at the clock again and rubbed the bruise a little. Well, it's at second period, right? Yeah. I'll try and get cleaned up and make it by then, okay? Well, I mean, if you can't make it, we understand. I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself worse by coming. Nah, it's okay. And believe me, the thing can't get much worse than it already is. I mean, seriously huge bruise. That's not making me feel any better about letting you come, Scott. The two said their see you laters and Scott hung up. He went back to his room and carefully slipped on some comfortable clothes, accidentally brushing the bruise several times and squeaking in pain. Back downstairs he found the first aid kit under the sink and applied some healing ointment. It hardly affected the bruise at all for some reason. Scott figured it must have been expired. He put the kit back and made some toast with butter and jam and quickly ate it and grabbed his backpack to leave. But as he was opening the door, the bruise suddenly started to feel strange and lit up with pain again. He clutched it in agony for a moment, and it dimmed again, but for some reason it relit his hunger. It felt like he hadn't eaten since yesterday again. What the frick? He whispered to himself. He thought on it in concern for a moment, but then fearing he'd be late, he grabbed some fruit from the cupboard and trudged off to school.